McMullen and McDonald, your Mac guys here on Birds 365. We got our buddy Special Ed Kracz to jump in with us today for a solid 15, 20 minutes. Ed Kracz, were you listening when Johnny and I were wrapping up the first segment?
The tail end of it, I heard a little bit about Devontae Smith and how the Eagles got that one right, I assume, in the draft.
Are both Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown already top 10 wide receivers in the league?
Yeah, I would say yes, definitely. Listen, they both had what? AJ had almost 1,500 yards receiving and 11 touchdowns. Devontae had almost 1,200 yards and what do you have, 7 touchdowns? I mean, how can you argue with those numbers? They're wide receiver number one, and they just happen to be on the same team.
I'm going to give Ed a chance because I think I know your answer, Ed. But if I forced you to pick between A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, who's better?
Well, they're going to have to make that decision, I think, some point here down the road. I mean, Devontae's due for a contract extension soon here. I think after 2024, he is signed through. And then AJ's numbers go through the roof, salary cap hit-wise. So they may have to make that decision. If I had to pick one, I would probably take A.J. Brown.
Oh, wow. See, I thought you were going to.
I would say
you
Smitty.
And I had that discussion. Yeah.
Yeah.
You thought at end of last season, I believe you said you thought Devontae was better than A.J.
Yeah.
Pump the brakes, Ed Kracz.
I just think A.J. is a more physical receiver. I think, he's a home run hitter from, you can run a quick slant with him and he can, burst up the seam and take it the distance. I love to watch Devontae Smith play. I just think he's so acrobatic, the way he can contort his body to make some catches, and so good on the sideline at getting both feet down. And, he's fun to watch, but I would take probably A.J. Brown over Devontae Smith.
The reason that you might think about taking Devontae Smith, for me off the top of my head, would be 2 less years of wear and tear. AJ was in the league for 2 years before Devontae. So when push comes to shove and you got to make the call and you can only pay one umpteen millions of dollars, you might lean toward the younger of the two guys. Now, AJ's young for his age class. So I think there's only like a year and change in age, but 2 years of NFL difference on the field. That might be enough to tip the scales toward Devontae. Here's the good news. They don't have to make that decision for several years because they can exercise that 50-year option on Devontae, so they don't.
And by the way, I wasn't even going down that route. It's an interesting discussion, but I just wanted, like right now, who's the better receiver? Not about choosing one. It's just on this team, and they get to play off each other. They get to complement each other. Who's the better receiver? I still default to AJ. I thought you were going to say Devontae. That's why I threw it at you.
Yeah, AJ, receivers just aren't built like him. There aren't many that are. I mean, DK Metcalf has, that linebacker playing receiver body. So I just think, AJ is just such a rare breed.
He looks bigger, by the way, if that's possible.
No kidding. He really does. But, listen, I mean, AJ's had some injuries, too, in the previous years. Jody's right. He's got a little bit more wear and tear in terms of NFL life. But, Smith has been able to stay healthy. He's played every single game. I mean, so there's something to be said for that, too. But I would still go AJ.
Well, that's another thing. He was banged up last year with the toe, and he played through it. And he deserves credit for that.
No doubt.
Because he is a tough guy. And he did play through some injuries, and that's another feather in his cap. Yeah, he's been tremendous. I mean, you remember, Ed, how bad it was at receiver before Devontae got here, and then AJ. It was bad. Carson had that one season where he threw for all those yards, and but they didn't have a receiver over, what was it, 600? It was unbelievable. In this era of the NFL, they could not find receivers. And obviously Jalen Reagor would be the biggest example of the mistake. And then they finally got one in Devontae and doubled down and got AJ. And now all of a sudden they have this embarrassment of riches, and we're complaining about the third receiver. They never had a one worth.
Yeah, I mean, Travis Fulgham. I remember how excited we were about Travis Fulgham. I mean, we were sitting there, John, in the Pittsburgh Steelers press box watching him have
COVID days.
You know,
it was us and Travis Fulgham in the stadium. Nobody was near Travis.
That's right. Yeah, but everybody was excited about him, and there was a time. I mean, he was just putting up yards so quickly and in such a short period of time. We thought maybe he'll go over 1,000 yards receiving and become the first receiver to do that since Jeremy Maclin in 2014. And now here we are, 9 years after that happened, talking about two receivers that both went over 1,000 yards. And I'll tell you what, Dallas Goedert might have had over 1,000 yards last year too.
Yeah, he would have.
Had he not missed 5 games. Yeah.
Let's hope all the Eagle wide receivers stay healthy, because if they don't, then we won't say, why are we debating about the third wide receiver when we got this embarrassment of riches at number 1 and number 2? Because you're one significant injury away from having to elevate your number 3 to number 2, and your offense is set to be able to throw to these two talented guys. So, yeah, I think it's a meritorious conversation to have. Apparently the coach loves him some Quez Watkins, that he stood out in shorts the couple of days that you were there and a couple of minutes before they let you guys in. Apparently Quez looked phenomenal, and all you guys out there fretting over the fact that we might not have the best third wide receiver in the league. Coach Sirianni says, don't even start. Quez will take the challenge of the naysayers like Jody McDonald and throw it back in your face. He's going to have that kind of season. Nick Sirianni oversell Quez Watkins to you this summertime, Ed Kracz?
It sure seemed that way, and it sure seemed like it was an on-purpose overselling too. He wants to let people know that they believe in Quez, and maybe letting Quez know that we believe in you. But it was funny, you guys may have talked about this. Was an hour after Nick Sirianni praises Quez Watkins, we're let inside the building. It was an indoor practice, their final OTA, because of the air quality last week, and Quez drops a pass, right in front of us.
Yeah.
On a double move, I think it was.
Great throw, too.
Great throw from Hurts. It hits him right in the hands, and he just dropped it. So, that left you scratching your head a little bit like, really? This is the guy that had the best spring of anybody else? I mean, I know, and it's a short window, right? Maybe he caught everything else that was thrown his way in the times that we weren't there.
You never know. We only got to see 100 minutes in the spring, Ed. So you never know. But I wrote about Quez, and I wrote about Trey Sermon as well. And I've often brought up the Mac McCains of the world, the Tay Gowans, the Kerry Vincents. Nick's always going to talk up his guys. We know Nick at this point. He's never going to criticize anybody. He's always going to talk up his guys. So where do you find that demarcation line where he's being honest and he's just, but I bring up Trey Sermon he keeps bringing him up unprompted. Is there something to that? Like, why is he prompting up Trey Sermon? He's doing it. That's the second time he's done it completely unprompted.
Yeah,
do you make something of that?
I think he did it last year too, when he was asked about Trey. He wasn't asked about Trey Sermon, and he brought him up, and he said, we have another 3rd round pick on our team that we didn't even have, that we didn't draft it, and that's the 3rd round pick from the 49ers. And he said the same thing about Ian Book, I think, who was a 4th round, or maybe it was Janarius Robinson. He was praising Robinson and Sermon for being former draft picks. And he said, we have an extra 3rd and an extra 4th on our team this year that we didn't even draft, but other teams did. So, he likes Trey Sermon. There's no doubt. And we saw him in a very small window last year. I think it was against the Vikings, maybe.
I think it was the
Jaguars.
Yeah. 2 carries, 19 yards, something like that. I mean, he showed some good burst. And you talk about A.J. Brown being a big guy. Trey Sermon's got some pretty good size to him as well. Listen, the way Rashad Penny struggles to stay healthy, Trey Sermon could have a role in this team. I mean, Boston Scott, I know everybody loves him against the Giants, but he might be one of those veterans that's really battling for a spot here. I know he's the leader in the room, and you wrote about Boston Scott, but he's one of those veteran guys, I think, who could be fighting for a roster spot, depending on how Trey Sermon does this summer. And Nick, I think, does really like Trey Sermon. I don't think that's him just piling on like maybe he does with Quez Watkins. I think he really does want to see what Trey Sermon can do this year.
All right, so since we're talking about the Eagles and their passing game, I'll get your take on this. If we talked about this with you before, and I apologize. I know John and I have talked about it plenty. Eagles wide receivers, Eagles running back receptions that they've added DeAndre Swift, who's been very good catching ball out of backfield for Detroit the last couple of years. People projecting Kenny Gainwell to be more of a factor, and that's a strength of his. But the Eagles just didn't throw it to the backs coming out of the backfield last year. That's not a key play for them. And when it comes to everybody's covered, quarterback's got to find an outlet type play. Jalen Hurts turns it upfield and makes plays with his legs. He doesn't dump it off to the running back just to get the ball out of his hands and not get sacked. Do you think we see a significant addition to the Eagles this year, the passing game to the running backs this season? Will Brian Johnson have anything to do with that if that's the case?
I do. I really do. I think, you thought DeAndre Smith can catch 40 passes in this offense. And I think, Jalen Hurts will have the confidence in throwing him the ball rather than trying to make plays with his legs. I know when he signed his contract, Hurts, that Sirianni said that, hey, we didn't pay him more money to do less. But I could see them saying to him, hey, use your running backs. Don't take off all the time with your legs. Let your running backs catch the ball. We brought you a running back who one of his fortes and strengths is catching the football out of the backfield, and that's DeAndre Swift. So throw the ball to him. Don't put yourself in any harm's way. I mean, listen, Jalen Hurts to me has to play all 17 games this year. He hasn't been able to do that since he was a starter, and I would like to see him do that. And you can debate the manner in which he got hurt the last 2 years, but the bottom line is when you're taking off and you're carrying the ball, you're opening yourself up to the possibility that you may get hurt. I mean, we saw him take that shot in Chicago when he ran the ball and get thrown down on his shoulder. The Eagles kind of dodged a bullet there and in the fact that he was able to return as quickly as he did. You don't want that. And now you have a running back in DeAndre Swift who can catch the ball out of the backfield, who has a history of doing that. So, yeah, Jalen, throw the ball to DeAndre Swift in the flat more than you've done in recent year. I don't think he ever had the confidence to do that with Miles Sanders. I'm not sure Kenny Gainwell inspired that same kind of confidence. And Boston Scott just didn't log that high number of snaps to develop any sort of chemistry. But I think DeAndre Swift is going to be running back number one on this team, and he's going to get his share of receptions and targets because I think Hurts needs to do that in order to show that he can play 17 games in a season.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about our little time at OTAs, Ed, was the bubble screens, which drive me insane. But they were throwing them to DeAndre and Kenny Gainwell more than, say, Quez Watkins. I think that could be because those guys can catch the football, unlike Miles, who couldn't do it consistently. And when you talk about those bubble screens, you need to make that first guy miss or break that first tackle. And running backs can do that. So better than receivers, obviously. So when you have a running back who can catch the football, I think what I'm trying to say is I think there might be more designed plays to the running backs when you talk about those smoke screens, bubble screens, hitches, whatever you want to call them. But when it's breaking down, I think Jalen's Jalen, man. Just tuck it and go. And by the way, I applaud him. I think that's the way to go because he's going to get more than dumping it off to the running back. But I think they might up I'd rather have DeAndre Swift running that smoke screen than Quez Watkins. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. But I would like to see, I could see them doing more of the design stuff. But again, it's an offense that goes through AJ, Devontae, and Dallas. And, you maybe incorporate Swift in there on those bubble screens and Kenny Gainwell. But I'd like to see more off scripted stuff where if the pressure breaks down, because we know that Smith and Brown can get open if given, a good amount of time to get them the football. But if the protection breaks down or you're getting blitzed and you're under pressure, I would like to see a running back just leak into the flat and just toss it to him and let's see what he can do. I mean, that's what you're paying these other pieces for. And I'd like to see more of that off scripted stuff to guys like Swift and maybe Kenny Gainwell, if he can play his role play his way into having the coach's confidence. But Swift for sure can catch the football, and I wonder if Penny can too. I think when you look at Penny, boy, he's a load. He's just a big, well put together guy. But I'm not sure he has a history of catching a ball like Swift does. But I just like to see some off scripted stuff from Hurts to Swift when a play breaks down quickly.
Eddie, this is something that John and I have been kicking around. Need your take on it. When the Eagles actually begin to practice. This summer was not practice, it was activities, and it was shortened activities, and it was less than 11-11 on the field activities. And that's the way everybody does it in the NFL. Eagles just do it for less amount of time. But at some point, they're going to have actual practices, and they're going to have the joint practices with the two teams coming in here to Philadelphia this year, Cleveland and Indianapolis. When that happens, and they tell Jason Kelce, listen, you've got veteran downtime. Yeah, we're not going to expect you to be out there. You're going to get to stand on the sidelines. And they've been doing that certainly since the Doug Peterson era into the Nick Sirianni era. They give their veteran guys a little bit more downtime than everybody else. When Kelce's not out there, who's going to be playing center?
That's a good question. Kelce wasn't at the last OTA we saw, and who was getting his reps? I saw Julian Good getting some reps there.
Julian Good-Jones. Now Cam was with the first team at center. That's the interesting point. So
yeah, but off to the side, it was when they were doing just kind of their technique work or their whatever before they got together for 7-on-7. It was Cam was at the right guard, and Julian Good-Jones was at center. So listen, if Cam wins that right guard job, which he might. I know Tyler Steen played right guard during those 7-on-7s, but if Cam wins that right guard job, you're going to have to find a center. I don't think you want to switch centers or switch two positions should something happen to Jason Kelce during the game. It is interesting, but obviously the Eagles haven't had to worry about it. The guy's made 140 plus starts in a row, but he has been nicked up a couple times in game. So who do you bring in? Is it going to be Cameron Tom? Or Julian.
Don't forget Brett Toth either. Brett Toth
possibly. I haven't seen him get any work at center, but it could be somebody like Julian Good-Jones. Sua Opeta, we know it won't be him, right? He's just a guard, but maybe you flip Juergens to center and bring in Sua at right guard. And
in theory, it would be Juergens to center, Tyler Steen at right guard.
That's right. That's right. That's true.
But here's now Kelce's going to play. He just does. If his arms hanging off, his legs hanging off, he's going to play. My interesting point of seeing Cam move over when Jason wasn't there, and again, this is all individual work. When they're doing those combo blocks with Stoutland before practice, because they're not doing team drills.
Right.
It was Cam Juergens at center, was Tyler Steen at right guard. Now, Jason, and what I think Jody was getting at, Jason's going to get a bunch of maintenance days at camp. In theory, you'd want to get Cam Juergens as much work at right guard as possible to get him ready to play right guard. And you got plenty of placeholders, as you mentioned. You even brought up Julian Good-Jones, but you have Cameron Tom, you have Brett Toth, you have Julian. They can all play center. You don't really need an effective center for practice, let's be honest. So if they keep moving Cam back in the center and let Tyler Steen have the first team reps at right guard during those maintenance days, what does that tell you? Does that tell you they have confidence in Cam Juergens, or does it tell you that they want to look at Tyler Steen?
Boy, I guess you could also throw in there, do they have confidence in anybody else to play center after Kelsey and Juergens? You could say that, and maybe that's more the case. But yeah, I think Tyler Steen, they want to develop Tyler Steen. They're pretty high on Tyler Steen, and I guess it could be a couple different things if you're looking at it that way. I don't like it though. I don't like messing with the center position. I think you probably stay with Cam Juergens at right guard. If you're getting ready for a team in season and Kelsey's not there, I think you keep Cam right at right guard.
Wow.
I really do. And you bring in whoever your backup is going to be, whichever player you're confident in.
Well, typically Stout says that he doesn't like to move multiple positions.
Right.
But boy, yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. That's interesting that you bring that up, Ed.
Yeah.
Because I just kind of thought, well, Cam will go play center, but
yeah,
then you're
question by Jody.
affected.
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, and that's something that we should really look at. Is you're right, when Kelsey gets these maintenance days, and even during training camp, they give maintenance days.
Yeah, oh yeah,
who's going to be out there for team drills at center? That's something I'll mark down as something to watch going into camp. Good work there.
It's fun. It's funny because you're right. Stoutland is on the record as saying he'd prefer not to make a move that makes him make multiple moves. That you got to change two positions. We've all heard him say that. Nick goes a different direction. Nick likes to brag on cross-training. Oh, we cross-trained him here. We cross-trained him here. Well, if you're going to just put a guy at a position and then leave him there, and if he gets hurt, you're going to replace him. You're not going to move one guy to fill another slot, whatever. Well, then why do you need all the cross-training? Kind of, they're at odds with each other. Stoutland's stance on, no, we're not going to be moving the whole offensive line around just to replace one guy. But Nick's bragging on, oh, we cross-train everybody everywhere. They all play. Plug and play. Put them in wherever we want.
Well, remember, I mean, to be fair to Nick, I mean, things change. When you have 90 guys, nothing matters, right? You have a backup center, a backup left guard, a backup right guard, a backup right tackle, backup left tackle. But then you got to get down to 53, and it's 46 on game day. And all of a sudden, you can only have 8 offensive linemen. And if the crap hits the fan, you know, a center might have to play guard, a guard might have to play center, a tackle might have to play guard. That's why it's good to have somebody like Jack Driscoll. Isaac was phenomenal at it before he took over. He could play anywhere. Jack Driscoll can play everywhere but center. It's important to have those guys because you can't dress everybody on game day. That's why it's important to have that cross training. But it's easy in training camp to just say, oh, I got to back up everything. Especially this year. There's no cut, so you're going to have 90 guys right up until you have 53. I don't think that's good for the NFL, by the way. I think that's a bad rule. They eliminated all the cuts. They've been doing it incrementally. It used to be 90 to 75, and then 75 to 53. Then it was 90 to 85, and now it's just one big cut. And you know, I don't think that's a good thing from the strategy perspective of cross-training on the offensive line. You can say, well, Julian Good-Jones, you brought up, Ed. You can play him at center. He's probably not going to be there on the 53. He's certainly not going to be on the 46. Then what do you do?
Yeah, and you're not doing a favor to any of those guys that are getting cut, you know, after spending all summer with the same team. You're not doing them any favors to go find another either.
Yeah.
But I don't think teams will wait. I don't think a team like the Eagles will wait until the last day to cut, you know, whatever it is, 40 guys off their team. I think they'll still probably do it a little bit more incrementally and keep guys at positions where they're going to need some depth going into the last preseason game. But I don't think they'll just, you know, do it all in one wave. I think the Eagles will release guys as the summer goes on.
Yeah, I'll disagree with you there, Ed. I think the Eagles will keep the 90 for as long as they can keep the 90, because if there's anything that the Eagles do, they try and win in the margins. They try and win on the small things, the little things, and they're very good at it. As a matter of fact, Howie Roseman et al. Have been very good at doing just that. Why would you give another team a chance to get in somebody's ear, especially if you like a player and you think he can be a practice squad guy for you? You want to keep him as long as possible so that other teams aren't talking to him and his agent. You want to, we'll keep you. We want you on the practice squad. We just ran out of spots.
Yeah, plus they don't want anybody playing any of the regulars playing in preseason games. I mean, they want, want the backups for preseason games. They've proven that.
There's still like 5 to 10 guys you can just take after the first week of summer and say, okay, he's not.
Well, I think it's one of those things. Like if somebody gets hurt and you waive them injured, injury settlement, and you're down to like 88, I don't think they'll go back up to 90 and late in camp just to get to 90. But I think they're going to keep all their healthy guys, until they cut to 53, because that third preseason game, you left Miami, Ed. I stayed there for that god-awful game. You remember that game? They didn't play anybody, and the Dolphins, remember, they canceled day 2 because of the virus or whatever was going through their training facility. Nice training facility, by the way.
Oh
yeah. They played some guys and they destroyed the Eagles, who played nobody. And it doesn't matter, but the Eagles don't want to play any of their key guys in the preseason. Any. Week 1, week 2, or week 3. That's why they have the joint practices. They want to get their starters work in practice and say, all right, I don't want to call them crash test dummies, but they're they want those guys who aren't going to be part of the team taking the hits in the game.
Yeah, there are more controlled environments with the practices with other teams. You can control how things go. So it's a better situation for the starters.
And the one practice that they did get in against the Dolphins dominated them. And then as John pointed out with the game, the Dolphins kept a couple of their regulars in to get a little action in that last preseason game. And then they started to incorporate their subs. The Eagles had the subs in. The Dolphins 1s beat the Eagles 2s and 3s. The Dolphins 2s beat the Eagles 3s and 4s. Then the Dolphins 4s beat the Eagles 4s. They just beat them all game long. Didn't matter who the Eagles had out there on the field. Dolphins moved the ball up and down against them. That kind of sucked me into believing that the Dolphins could actually make the Super Bowl. All right, Ed, so I'm going to give you a chance to hold hands with your buddy John McMullen and sing Kumbaya. Did the Eagles screw you and McMullen?
Always.
The one practice the Eagles will have open to the public is on Sunday. They usually do it on Sunday at 7 p.m. Johnny Mac likes 1 o'clock. He doesn't like 4 o'clock. He doesn't like 7 o'clock. He likes 1 o'clock action. And the Eagles' one practice open to the public is going to start at 7 p. Did they just tell you guys shut up and show up?
It's always at night, isn't it? Yeah, it's always at night. Yeah, the open practice at the link. Yeah.
No, they had daytime practice. It's much more often.
I think 7's a little later than it normally is. I think it's even if it's been at maybe 6. Maybe they're just getting us ready for the regular season. I mean, what do the Eagles have, like 4 1 o'clock games out of their 17 this year?
They don't have many.
They don't have many. And fortunately, we don't really have deadlines, in the .com world. It's not
not the old days.
Where you kind of had to write your running and nobody cared about it. And I mean, listen, I don't like being up that late anymore. But this
you get home from the link and have a nice little post midnight snack. Is that what you're telling us, Ed? Have a nice meal after an Eagles 7 o'clock preseason practice game. Is that the deal?
They will do all the media availability before the practice.
Right.
And now the problem with those open practices, the players have to stay a little bit. They usually have military day. They might do it at the NovaCare complex where they give the jerseys to military people, but they sign autographs. So you get them a little bit on the field. I remember talking to Joe Douglas, your guy now, Jody, for a long time on the field after one of those practices. It was at night, but they've had some. They've had some. They used to have 2 open practices. Now they've done.
Now they're down to just one.
Just one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stinks though. Everything
Yeah.
at night stinks, no
Yeah.
question. But it's part of it. It stinks.
Yeah.
Jody, everything at 1 o'clock. No reporter who has been around for more than, what do you say, Ed? 2 years is going to say, "Oh no, give me a night game." No, 1 o'clock. That's what we want.
Yeah,
But
because
let you get out on Saturday. If you were 20 something, John, you get out on Saturday night. You don't have to worry about being up if you got a 7 o'clock game the next day. Part of it has to do with our age. Yeah, we like the early because.
Well, I said that's been around for a while. That's been around. Yeah,
yeah,
1 o'clock.
I mean, it's nice they give us pregame or pre-practice availability for those for those open practices, because you're right, then we don't have to stick around afterward.
Yeah.
To go in the locker room or go to the press conferences. So, that's the one good thing. But yeah, make sure you're practiced with your naps this year, because a lot of late night action.
No, naps only. I always stick it up. I stay up throughout, man. Naps only make you more tired. I found that out. No naps.
Right. Eddie, last thing, and John and I talked about this yesterday and last week, and I know I annoy Eagle fans when I bring it up, but it's a legit concern. How much oversight will the Philadelphia Eagles have over Jalen Carter over the next month? Because there's a reason that they got Jalen Carter at number 9, because he had off-field issues, and there should be, and there were for some other teams, concerns enough that they decided to pass on arguably the most talented player in the draft. Call-ins, Zooms, private eyes. How far are the Eagles going to make sure Jalen Carter doesn't get himself in trouble during this 5-week period?
Is Jalen Carter like on the FBI's 10 most wanted list? I mean,
he should be on the Eagles' 10 most wanted list.
He's a 22-year-old kid who's a little bit immature. Sounds like me when I was 22. Now, I didn't make those.
John, I'm guessing your first job didn't get you paid the kind of money to.
No, it did not.
Oh, okay.
I worked many years before I got to Jalen Carter.
Whoever hired you at age 22 wasn't nearly as invested in you as the Eagles are in Jalen Carter.
Not quite.
Yeah, I know Jalen Carter, he gets all the publicity about this, but I'm sure there are other players on this team that Dom DeSandro and his staff have to kind of keep tabs on to make sure they're doing the right things. I'm not sure who they are, but I know for a fact Dom is a pretty busy guy when they go on road trips, things of that nature. So, yeah, I'm sure that there are plenty of check-ins with several players, maybe all the players, except for, maybe there's a handful you can absolutely trust. But, yeah, I'm sure it's not just Jalen Carter. There are other players that are doing check-ins. I'm sure teammates are doing check-ins on their friends. Jalen Carter's got plenty of friends now in that Eagles locker room from his Georgia days. So, I'm sure there's a pretty strong network that is in place that's keeping tabs, not just on Jalen, but every player. You're talking about young players that are given a lot of money. And they're at different maturity levels. So, yeah, there are check-ins with more than just Jalen Carter. I can guarantee you that.
You know what I'm worried about? The only thing I'm worried about, and it's not involving Jalen Carter, it's involving everybody, to be honest, gambling. That's what I'm worried about, these damn apps, because this is a stupid policy from a stupid league. And the Calvin Ridley story. Calvin Ridley'd be an Eagle probably if he didn't take out his app.
And AJ Brown wouldn't be an Eagle with Calvin Ridley,
which is probably not a good thing. But nonetheless, it worked out for the Eagles in the end. But I don't know, man. These 6 things: don't play daily fantasy football. Don't take out the app when you're at a team hotel. Now, they educate the guys. Nick Sirianni talked about this a little bit, Ed, but I mean, I don't know. This is a big ball of nothing. Why can't the league use some common sense here? Look, it was the same thing with marijuana for years until they lightened up on that. If somebody has a problem, you identify it and you deal with it. if somebody takes out an app and makes a mistake, they shouldn't lose 6 games. They shouldn't lose half a season. You should warn them, maybe even fine them. And this is the players' union as well, and they should be.
I was going to say, this is collectively bargained here, John. This wasn't the NFL just magically made up these punishments.
Yeah, but the NFL
bargained it with the union.
But it's not closed. You can always open up these negotiations, and they could put an addendum, and both sides should recognize this is stupid, and this is hurting our league. Jameson Williams in Detroit, perfect example. That's a good player, a good young player, who's suspended for what, Jody? 6 games?
6 games, yeah.
6 games. That's dumb. That's dumb. Now, if you fine him and you warn him and you say, hey, dude, you can't do this, and he does it again, all right, no problem. I just think there's no common sense to this. And I think that's going to be a big story around the league, because there's going to be some big players gone, and hopefully not in Philadelphia.
Yeah, listen, I think they need to come out strong against this. I mean, this is going to be a problem, and you got to shut it down. You can't, give warnings or slap on the wrist. I think oppositely. I think that they have to come down as hard as they can, because this is an issue that's out of the barn now. You don't know how deep it runs into the college game. Maybe college guys are doing this too. 2 swipes of the phone is all it takes to make a bet. And you can't be betting on your league, I don't think, or especially on your own team. I just don't think that's a good look at all. And I think you have to come out strong against guys that do it. And then maybe you back off as it goes on. But you have to send a message early on this. And I think that's kind of the point of it is, we don't want this to get any more out of control than it already is or will become. So, yeah, I think you come down strong. And then just like they did with marijuana, once it becomes a little bit more accepted and now it's legal in so many states, then you kind of back off a little bit on the suspension. And maybe that's what's going to happen with gambling is you come out and you hit them hard, send the message early, and then maybe as, time goes on, you come back a little bit and put that addendum in.
Yeah, I'm dead in the middle of you two guys. John makes it sound like way too harsh and over the top. You're saying, no, as harsh as possible. That'll send a message. I'm in the middle. Do I think it's a little bit harsh, some of these suspensions? Yeah, I do. Do I think they need to stick to what they already have in place? Like you said, yeah, I do, Ed. And I'll tell you one guy who absolutely wants it to stay exactly as it is, Roger Goodell. Because anytime there's subjectivity to fines, Goodell gets freaking crushed. The football fans are, he's against us. Roger Goodell's an idiot. How did they put? No, he loves mandatory punishments, because then he just throws up his hand and goes, hey, we collectively bargained it. Don't look at me. This was something that was agreed to by absolutely everybody. So don't point your finger at me. I'm just reading you the rules as everyone signed off on and agreed to. So, yeah, until they get to the next collective bargaining agreement, they're not going to revisit this, John. It's not happening. It's in place. It's going to be what it's going to be.
I think, man, there's no room for common sense in society. Look, I think Ed is 100% correct. The kid on Indianapolis that's betting on the Colts. Yeah, I mean, come on, use your head. That's, suspend that kid. Now, if you're betting $5 on an NBA game in a team hotel, why can't you say, hey, stupid, don't do that first? And then if it continues to be a problem, okay, pile on. But, Calvin Ridley, to use him as an example, I mean, he's betting on other sports. He had no idea. That's another thing. You can blame. We have no access to the education. And some of these players say, we got a memo, we got this, we got that. We didn't even have a meeting. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. I think it's a disaster waiting to happen, because I guarantee there's a hell of a lot more than 6 players or whatever it is now that have bet on these apps. And maybe not NFL games, but NBA games, baseball, whatever. It's so easy to do. I think you're going down a path, and then it starts, to Jody's point, but in a different way. Then it starts saying, one team is saying, I lost Jameson Williams. this guy did this, this guy did
Right.
that, and it's a nightmare that could unfold.
You don't want. I know Ronnie Goodell doesn't want it, and I don't think the team should want it either. If you're right, if everybody calmer heads could prevail, and they could all sit down and outside a collective bargaining agreement, rewrite it and re-agree to it, and maybe back it off a little bit, that's good. If I'm the NFL, I'm going, no, we'll get back to this when the collective bargaining agreement runs out. We're not opening up a renegotiation here. If you're the players and you think they back off a little bit, yeah, you'd want that. I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. They're going to stick by the rules that they have right now. I'm with you, John. I hope they continue the education, and everybody. Florio had a post today about the agents not being educated, that the players get in directly, and the agents would like to be involved because they could keep a rein over the players that they represent. Well, shame on the NFL for that if they haven't kept the agents enough in the loop, but it's not going anywhere. It's going to be a story that Ed Kracz is going to be able to write about, John McMullen's going to be able to write about, and we'll be talking about it here on Birds 365. EK, always a pleasure, bud. Appreciate you jumping in. We'll get you back up in a couple weeks.
All right, guys. Thanks. Have a great one.
Thanks,
Ed Kracz on vacay.
Side.com/NFL/Eagles. Got to get that in.
Always good to get Ed on, and certainly he's the kind of guy, because he's McMullen's buddy, that we can go, yeah, no, you're on vacation, but yeah, we need you for 30 minutes on Birds 365.
Yeah, we kept him late too. Oh well.
Let me get the computer up and running for you guys. All right, McDonald McMullen coming back. We got hour number 2 of Birds 365 coming your way.